This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
We end our show today with part 2 of our interview with Mexico's renowned poet Javier Sicilia. Last year, his 24-year-old son, Juan Francisco, was murdered by drug traffickers in Cuernavaca, Mexico. In his son's memory, Sicilia created the movement for peace with justice and dignity to urge an end to the drug war. Sicilia is here in the United States to launch a month-long peace caravan this August.
Javier Sicilia led a similar caravan across Mexico last June, which attracted so much attention, Mexican President Felipe Calderón agreed to meet with him and other relatives of drug violence victims. Sicilia's efforts to legalize the drug trade is at odds with Calderón's efforts. I asked Sicilia what Calderón told them when they met. This is Javier Sicilia.
Bueno, se sensibilizó frente al problema de las víctimas y asumió la responsabilidad que le corresponde al Estado.
He got sensible to the problem of the victims, and he assumed the responsibility that is appropriate to the state to assume.
Y se creó la Procuraduría de Atención a Víctimas.
Then Justice Commission was created to address the problems of the victims.
Y la Ley General de Víctimas de la Violencia y el Abuso del Poder.
And a special act for national act for victims of the violence and the power abuse.
Pero no quiere cambiar la estrategia de guerra.
But he doesn't want to change the war strategy.
Sigue instalado en que hay que combatir a los cárteles mediante la violencia y no mediante otro tipo de políticas mucho más efectivas y profundas.
He keeps the position that he must make the war on the cartels and the drugs instead of using policies that are more deep and specific, and to make the war with violence to violence.
A pesar del fracaso.
In spite of the big failure.
The Summit of the Americas and before that, we're seeing Latin American presidents, leaders, past and present, conservative, progressive, sharing the same view, a consensus around the decriminalization of drugs right now. Most people don't even hear about this in the United States. What are your views? Are you calling for the decriminalization, for the legalization of drugs?
Sí, la droga siempre ha existido en el mundo.
Drugs have always existed in the world.
Ha tenido su lugar sagrado incluso.
They have even their sacred place.
En los mundos amerindios, desde los ritos de Eleusis en Grecia.
In the pre-Columbian rites, in the rites in Greece, in the uses.
El problema es que el mercado la ha deslegitimado.
The problem is that the market has make it illegal.
Y como todo que toca el mercado lo ha podrido.
And as everything that the market touches, it got a poison.
Es un problema como ahora como el alcohol.
It's now a problem just as the alcohol use.
Como el tabaco.
Like the tobacco use.
Como las drogas que venden en las farmacias. Hay mucha droga en las farmacias.
Like the prescription drugs in pharmacies.
Hay que meterlas en las leyes férreas del mercado para controlarlas.
You have to put them into the market laws so that you can control them.
Como cualquier otro producto.
Like any other product.
No hay otra manera.
There is no other way.
O para proteger muchachos de que no caigan en la droga hay que matarlos, como a mi hijo.
Or what else? What's the option? To protect kids so that they don't use drugs, do you have to kill them just like they killed my son?
Tuvieron a un presidente que fumó marihuana, Clinton.
You had a president who used marijuana, Clinton did.
Tuvieron un presidente alcohólico, Bush.
You had an alcoholic president, Bush.
Si los hubieran metido a la cárcel no hubiera tenido presidente.
If you had them in jail, you wouldn't have had a president.
¿no?
So
Bueno, eso es lo que está haciendo la criminalización de la droga, destruyendo gente con posibilidades.
That's the policy of criminalizing the use of drugs,
Y matando
destroying
inocentes.
people who had possibilities and killing innocent people.
I want to ask you, President Calderon's term is about to come to an end. A new election is coming up in Mexico this summer, and your sense of the candidates for the various parties, how they are addressing or not addressing this issue of what to do about the drug war?
Por desgracia no está en las agendas de los candidatos.
Unfortunately, this is not in none of the agendas of the candidates.
Los candidatos no y los partidos no han entendido que hay una emergencia nacional.
The parties and the candidates have not understood that there is a national emergency,
Que necesitaríamos un gobierno de unidad nacional para salvar el país.
that we would need a unity government, a national government to save the country.
Y se lanzan unas elecciones como si el país estuviera en paz.
And they make elections as if the country were in peace.
Quien llegue a la presidencia simplemente va a seguir administrando la desgracia.
The one who wins the president will simply administer the misfortune.
Necesitamos tomar el problema en serio todos
We need to face the problem seriously, all of us.
y cambiar la ruta que hasta ahora se ha seguido.
And we need to change the path that has been taken up to now.
Late last month, a funeral was held for Regina Martinez, the Mexican journalist who was murdered inside her home in Veracruz. She often wrote about drug trafficking for the news magazine Proceso, one of Mexico's oldest and most respected investigative news magazines. I want to go to a clip of Rafael Rodriguez Castañeda. He is the editor of Proceso.
Proceso es una revista.
Proceso is a magazine that, contrary to what Regina Martinez's assailants might have thought, is not stopped by things that shock us. It doesn't make us doubt that we are doing what we should do, which is to reflect on what is happening in this country with authenticity, honesty, honor, and clarity, as far as our professional reach allows.
Honradez, honestidad, claridad, y hasta donde nuestro alcance.
That was Rafael Rodriguez Castañeda, the editor of Proceso. These deaths of journalists, of your son, of tens of thousands of Mexicans.
Pues estamos muy indignados, muy indignados. Es la prueba evidente de que esta guerra no está sirviendo más que para matar a la mejor gente de este país. Y yo creo que los Estados Unidos tienen que tomar cartas en el asunto y ser conscientes. Detrás de cada uno de sus adictos, detrás de cada una de sus armas, nosotros tenemos muertos como Regina, tenemos muertos como mi hijo, tenemos familias destrozadas.
We are outraged because this war has done nothing for us. It has not solved the problem, and we're losing most of the best people. My son and many Mexicans have died, and we need to create awareness, consciousness that the American people know that behind every drug consumer and behind every use of guns, we pay with dead people who die, like this journalist, like my son.
Está nuestra sangre y estamos perdiendo el país y la democracia.
And it's our blood on stake, and it's the country and democracy.
You have said you have stopped writing poetry. Why?
Es complicado.
It's complicated.
Pero bueno, daré una pista.
Well, I'll give you some hints.
Teodoro Adorno siempre me llamó mucho la atención cuando decía que después de Auschwitz no se podía escribir poesía.
Teodoro Adorno attracted my attention when he said that after Auschwitz, poetry could not be written.
No lo entendía.
I didn't understand.
Cuando mataron a mi hijo, porque Auschwitz no es un asunto de cantidad, es un asunto de intensidad.
When my son was killed, because Auschwitz is not a matter of quantity, it's a matter of intensity.
Yo viví Auschwitz.
I lived out Auschwitz.
Yo vivo Auschwitz con tanto muerto en México.
I am living in Auschwitz with all these people dying in Mexico.
Y un poeta vive del lenguaje de que le da su mundo.
And a poet lives out of language of the word that the world is given to him.
Ese lenguaje está degradado
And that word is degraded
por los asesinos, por la podredumbre política.
by the murderers and the political corruption and poor.
Ya no me alcanza el lenguaje para decir lo que tendría que decir.
I don't have enough words to say what I would have to say.
But as you, Mexico is the largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. It has a huge, long culture, a proud history. Do you fear that the country is on the verge of being a failed state?
Sí, yo creo que no hay Estado. Yo diría que incluso el Estado está absolutamente fracturado.
Yeah, I even would say that there is no state. The state is completely fractured.
Y si los partidos no toman conciencia de esto, estamos caminando hacia un narcoestado.
And if the parties, political parties, are not aware of this, we are going to a narco state, a drug state.
Donde la violencia se va a instaurar tanto legal como ilegalmente y vamos a perdernos para siempre.
Where violence will have its roots both legally and illegally, and we are going to be forever lost in that.
Finally, the route you will take in the United States. You are starting in California?
Sí, empezamos en San Diego, Tijuana, San Diego, y nos vamos por toda la frontera hasta Brownsville.
We start in Tijuana, in San Diego, and we go over or cross the border to Brownsville.
Hasta subir hacia Chicago, Nueva York, Washington.
We go up to Chicago, New York, and Washington.
And your demands?
¿Cuáles son tus demandas?
Pues cambiar la política de las drogas, legalizarlas, tomarlas como un asunto de salud pública.
Change the drug use policies, legalize drugs, and take them as a health issue, public health issue.
Generar un control serio y fuerte de las armas que están entrando.
Gun control, a serious and strong gun control that are being exported to Mexico.
Poner enfrente el lavado de dinero.
Money laundering, to make it visible.
Y visibilizar que esto también está dañando a las comunidades migrantes.
And make it visible that this is also hurting the immigrant communities.
Aquí las que están siendo extorsionadas, muchas familias inmigrantes.
There are many immigrants, families that are being extorted.
Y en mi país los centroamericanos están desapareciendo.
And in my country, Central American immigrants are disappearing.
No sabemos dónde están.
We don't know where they are.
Do you think Obama has changed anything from President Bush?
En este caso no.
Not in this matter.
No le ha interesado.
He hasn't been interested.
Estaba escuchando a Kushner hace rato y él enfatizaba que había que tomar medidas mucho más radicales. Hablaba del medio ambiente, hablaba de...
I was listening to Kushner a while ago. He was talking about being more radical, about the urgent measures, about the environment, for instance.
De los derechos humanos.
Human rights.
Esta guerra tiene que ver con los derechos humanos.
This war has to do with human rights.
Y exige una política humana.
And requires a human policy.
De la cual Obama no está atendiendo, por desgracia.
That unfortunately Obama is not addressing.
And to those who say poets shouldn't be... The Mexican poet Javier Sicilia. He was translated by Malu Hawakuha del Toro. Sicilia founded the movement for peace with justice and dignity after his 24-year-old son, Juan Francisco, was murdered last year by drug traffickers. Sicilia is here in the United States to launch a month-long peace caravan this August that'll start in California, go through Arizona, Texas, and end up in Washington, D.C. That does it for today's show. To get a copy, you can go to our website at democracynow.org.
de atención a víctimas.
Then Justice Commission was created to address the problems of the victims.
Y la Ley General de Víctimas de la Violencia y el Abuso del Poder.
And a special act for a national act for victims of the violence and the power abuse.
Javier Sicilia.
Bueno, se sensibilizó frente al problema de las víctimas y asumió la responsabilidad que le corresponde al Estado.
He got sensible to the problem of the victims, and he assumed the responsibility that is appropriate to the state to assume.
Y se creó la Procuraduría, pero no quiere cambiar la estrategia de guerra.
But he doesn't want to change the war strategy.
Sigue instalado en que hay que combatir a los cárteles mediante la violencia y no mediante otro tipo de políticas mucho más efectivas y profundas.
He keeps the position that...
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
We end our show today with part 2 of our interview with Mexico's renowned poet Javier Sicilia. Last year, his 24-year-old son, Juan Francisco, was murdered by drug traffickers in Cuernavaca, Mexico. In his son's memory, Sicilia created the movement for peace with justice and dignity to urge an end to the drug war. Sicilia is here in the United States to launch a month-long peace caravan this August.
Javier Sicilia led a similar caravan across Mexico last June, which attracted so much attention, Mexican President Felipe Calderón agreed to meet with him and other relatives of drug violence victims. Sicilia's efforts to legalize the drug trade is at odds with Calderón's efforts. I asked Sicilia what Calderón told them when they met. This is